News 6. Today's show is presented by the 6th grade classes of Liberty Center Elementary School in Liberty Center, Ohio. As small as Liberty Center is, we found that there are some pretty incredible people here. There are some interesting hobbies and life experiences in store. So let's get started. Dana?
Although Christmas of 1982 is past, Linda Sharp will continue to prepare for the next one. She makes 50 to 60 pinecone wreaths each year, and when she's not busy doing that, she makes silk flower arrangements. Linda got started about 4 years ago and has been going strong ever since. Her silk flowers can be sent at local weddings and proms. Sometimes she uses them in her wreaths. The pine cones that she uses need a lot of preparation. They must be sprayed to get rid of mites. Then they must be baked to dry them out. The cones are then tied to a metal rim covered with burlap. The inside and outside edges are all pine cones. Linda fills in the center with nuts, which are held on by nylon. But she also uses other pine cones and berries and flowers. Sometimes this hobby can be painful because some of the cones are spiny. When complete, the wreath is sprayed with a shellac to protect it. Even though her pine cones are all in storage for the season, she will be busy making those flower arrangements for the springtime festivities. Todd?
Can you imagine what it would be like to be 19 years old, thousands of miles away from home, wounded and held prisoner? Mr. Ted Moeller is one who can remember some of these frightening experiences. In 1944, he became a part of Patton's army in Normandy, France. Mr. Moeller can remember going 67 days without hot food or water to wash with. He can tell of a life in a prisoner of war camp. He can tell of the escape from that camp. News 6 visited Mr. Moeller where he talked with his grandson, Dave Sharp, about some of his experiences.
Mr. Moeller, what was it like being in the service during World War II?
Everyone else was going to service, and I thought it was my patriotic duty to go and serve my country.
I understand you have a Purple Heart. Can you tell us about it?
If you were wounded in action, you received a Purple Heart. When I was injured, it was a shrapnel wound. It wasn't a small arm. It was a shrapnel wound, and actually it happened when I was in a rest area. We'd been in combat for 67 days, and we'd pull back for some hot rations and a change of clothing and some showers, and the Germans started shelling this area, and a tree burst. When a shell would hit a tree, anything that would hit it would explode, and the shrapnel would fly. And the shrapnel is what went through the big part of this leg and into this leg.
How do you feel about the experience now?
Oh, I wouldn't want to go back at my age now, but if I was young and we were in war, I would do the same thing.
Thanks, Grandpa. This is Dave Sharp reporting for News 6.
We're glad that Mr. Moeller could share this with us, and we hope that no one will ever have to see times like that again. Jody?
Do you believe that a house could be built without nails? Well, Janet and Gail Frederick came close to doing it. They wanted to have a home with an appropriate setting for their collection of antique furniture, so they built a log home. Their home is constructed from 3 log cabins in northwest Ohio, although there are 4 wooden pegs at the base and 40,000 nails to hold down the roofing. The side structures simply hold together by weight and chinking. The chinking is made from cement and perlite. The perlite keeps the cement from expanding and contracting. Well, you walk into the Fredericks home, it is like a walk into the early to mid-1800s. Baskets hang from beams into the kitchen. There are old oil portraits and wooden work clocks. The walls are painted white to look like whitewash. Although there is electricity and running water, the Fredericks use wood stoves for their main source of heat. Even the upper floor is heated by the downstairs stove because cracks in the upper floor allow the heat to rise. We really enjoyed the visit and hope they continue to find all these wonderful treasures from days past. Charles?
Doris Clymer has the most interesting past. She spent 22 years of her life as a missionary in Nigeria, West Africa. As a young girl, she read the story of Mary Slessor, who was a missionary in Calabar and decided to pattern her life in that way. While training at the Moody Bible Institute in Chicago, Mrs. Clymer met her future husband, Reverend Clymer preceded Doris to Africa, and when she sailed, she had all the essentials for their wedding. They were married in Nigeria and spent the next 22 years doing medical work in the Bachi province. Marion Kessler talked with Mrs. Clymer about some of the culture and lifestyle she experienced.
What was your favorite pastime?
Visiting the outstation churches, living in the little huts and staying with them and visiting them in their own homes.
Could you tell us something about the Nigerian culture?
The people with whom we worked and amongst whom we lived were all farmers. They used just little short-handled hoes and plows. It was all hand farming, no mechanized labor. The women, of course, theirs was the housework, and there wasn't any running water or electricity, so they had to gather their wood for firewood and for cooking out in the bush. They had to get their water if there was a town well, and they were fortunate enough, that's what they did. Otherwise, they went to the local stream. The three-legged pot is used by some of the people in our area, and when they have one like this, they merely make a fire underneath it. For water pots, they're just gourds. They grow these themselves on their farms, and you'll notice the intricate patterns on them, and these are carved by red-hot arrowheads, all done just by hand, freehand. They're very talented in that way. A woman's sign of beauty, of course, everybody likes hairdos. I think about once in 10 days or so, they would do each other's hair, and they plaited it real tight to their head, as you've no doubt seen in pictures. The barbers were another very prominent person in the community. They use just straight razors, and they go from place to place, and usually on market days, you would find them just setting up shop under a tree. Our meat, that was the one thing that was hard to get where we lived in the bush, and so he would go out about one day every 6 weeks, take the day off and go hunting with an African or Nigerian tracker and try and bring home meat.
Thank you, Mrs. Clymer. This is Marion Kessler reporting for News 6.
The Clymers really miss the people of Nigeria and hope to have many visits to the province. Lori?
If someone said the words parlor roller or pygmy powder to you, what would you think? Well, Craig Graham would tell you that these are show pigeons. His family has some very interesting birds. Parlor rollers are a special breed of pigeons that does flips on the ground. A pygmy powder is a breed that puffs up the crop on its neck. Altogether, the birds have won 37 trophies in area shows. The Grahams also have other pigeons as well as geese and golden pheasants. Thanks for joining us today. We hope that you have enjoyed this show. Next time, News 6 will take you to interesting places in Findlay, Ohio.
Local production of today's edition of News 6 is made possible in part by a grant from the Toledo Edison Educational Services Program.